A very good morning, everyone. I'm so impressed at the turnout for this 132nd webinar session organized by AABN on a Sunday morning, when we usually wake up to a laid-back agenda-free day. But as you all know, we at AABN have been trying to transform the lethargic phase into a productive phase by presenting to you a gamut of technical and business experts and seasoned speakers to talk to you about upgrading core skills and competencies relevant to changing times and future challenges. So at the outset, I owe each of you a big thanks for logging, and I assure you that the next nearly next 1.5 hours is definitely going to be a rewarding experience with you with useful takeaways for us. Yes, I'm saying this with confidence because such is the profile of our guest speaker this week. The whole objective of this webinar series is the creation of awareness for entrepreneurship, innovation, and leadership throughout the AABN community and beyond. Milk producing mammals were an important part of the early agriculture in the world. You can't spell milk production without GOATS. Well, technically you could, but not historically. Goats were most likely the first dairy animals ever domesticated. Traditionally, cheese was made as a way of preserving the nutrients of milk. Cheese making is an ancient art and may have begun when someone serendipitously stored milk in a preserved animal stomach that caused the milk to coagulate because of the natural rennet. It would take a good part of today if I have to run you through all the achievements of this internationally recognized social entrepreneur who is the co-founder, which prides itself on value creation for business and individuals connected to the business. This social entrepreneur believes in making positive impacts, spurring performance and profit for leaders, teams, small entrepreneurs, and large businesses. At a juncture we find ourselves in today, there can be no one more fitting than Namrata Sundaresan to address, enlighten, and take questions from the diverse group on Say Cheese into the history, science, art, and business of the dairy product. Namrata is the co-founder of CASE, armed with a degree in business management, 15 years in international trade and investment consulting. It was the love of food that got her introduced to cheese making. Her extensive travel introduced her to excellent cheese across the world, and she eventually co-founded Kirki Cheese Private Limited. She honed her cheese-making skills with David Asher, a trainer of international repute and much respected name in the world of natural cheese making. Namrata takes inspiration from traditional cheese-making styles from across the world, and creating terroir-inspired cheese is her passion. Case works with a variety of locally sourced ethical and pastoral milk around the country and makes over 40 varieties of cheese. She is also an educator and India's only training partner for the Academy of Cheese, UK, and teaches the level 1 course of cheese to cheese enthusiasts, people who are keen on entering the artisan cheese market, and so on, with over 70 students in India. She also studies sensory fundamentals of food and is very keen on food, beverage, and cheese pairing. Namrata holds 4 different certifications from UK, USA, and Italy, Vermont, USA, University of Vermont, USA, Academy of Cheese, UK. Namrata, along with her business partner Anuradha, were awarded the Nari Shakti Puraskar in 2018 by the President of India in recognition of the contribution to women empowerment. Their team includes girls who are differently able, who are trained not just on cheese making, but all aspects of a small business. Namrata believes in growth through social empowerment and works with communities in Gujarat and Rajasthan in collaboration with Sajivan. Youth from the communities are trained on cheese making, market linkage, and support is provided to eventually help them create and enable the brand. 2 successful community brands trained by her are Panchal Dairy Private Limited and Bahula Naturals Private Limited. With a personality like Namrata, you can go on and on eulogizing. From a resume you sure did understand that this achiever would stop for nothing less in the sky. Yes, reaches for the sky is the vibe she spreads across when she talks as well. So I'm not going to make you wait longer. We'll let Namrata take over and regale you with their astute experiences and fresh ideas. Thank you, and over to you, Namrata.
Thank you so much, Mr. Gopi. Thanks, Mr. Shanmugam, and really glad to be. Thank you for having me here. And that was a very, very generous introduction. cheese as a word is so often used and we're familiar with it, yet there is very little that we know about this. It's an extremely big subject, like a lot of other things, and you can just keep going down. What I have tried to do today is to give you, how to say, an artist impression. So I've tried to put everything in a capsule, which is small and sort of digestible for one session. And I'm going to talk about what the actual word cheese means, why milk is so important, and especially today, I think it's a very important thing because there is so much that we hear about milk and not a lot of it in the positive way. But most of us here can relate to it that we grew up with milk. So I'm just going to jump into a presentation. We'll start. I think the house rules are that you ask your questions when we have the Q&A, but please feel free to write them down or make a note of it, because there are a lot of these questions that I often hear about cheese, and I'll try to address them. I think it'll be a meaningful discussions once we start talking and addressing those things. So I'm just going to start sharing my screen and okay, can somebody just tell me if it's visible?
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, great. So I would like to think that now is the right time to say cheese. And basically, here's why, and we're going to talk about it. Broadly, these are the things that I'm going to be covering. We're going to talk about setting a context to understanding milk, because that is where it starts from. We're going to talk about cheese and try defining cheese and understanding what cheese is, why the history and provenance of cheese is important. Sorry. The artisan cheese market in India and what are the opportunities here. We'll also look at the global market and see where India starts and try to make a distinction in terms of what real cheese is and what are we talking about. So if we start with milk, because that is where it all starts, milk is actually a watery sort of emulsion, which has got fat, it's got protein, it's got sugar or your carbohydrate. All of them are mixed with a lot of water. When I say mixed with a lot of water, I'm not talking about external water, but milk itself is a liquid. So if you look at milk, about 87 to 90% of milk is actually fluid, it's water. Only about 10 to 13% is solid. Most of the references that I'm going to be making is to cow milk, because that's the most abundantly available, and that is what we see, that is what we use. This percentage is slightly changed when it's buffalo, goat, sheep, camel. So bovine and non-bovine, when you talk about them, the percentage of water to liquid to solid changes slightly. But basically, the composition of the solids more or less remain the same. So when we talk about the solid, which is the 10 to 12%, we're talking about lactose, which is almost about 40%, which is the carbohydrate. There is casein. Casein is the primary protein, which is about 22, sometimes 25%. Ash is primarily the minerals that we're talking about. There is still some amount of whey protein. So milk usually has got two kinds of protein. Casein is the main protein, which is in abundance. And then, we all have heard about whey protein, which is available to us in a powder. So there is a small amount of whey protein, and then there is fat. Now, interestingly, what happens with milk is in cheese making, all the lactose, which is the carbohydrate, is actually turned into lactic acid. So cheese as a product is basically zero carb. Now, when we talk about milk, when we talk about cheese, there is something that we forget about milk. Milk for us has become a commodity. It's something that arrives at our doorstep every morning. It probably comes in a pouch or a bottle, depending where you're ordering from. It could be pasteurized. It could be UHT if it's coming from a Tetra Pak, or it can be raw milk. Now, in the cities today, it's becoming a little more common to see raw milk, as if there are organized players who have started catering to raw milk. But what is it that we do not see or think about milk? Now, when we say bovine or non-bovine, all milking animals have a specific milking period. There is a lactation cycle. There is a young one which has got the first right on the milk. There is always more milk from the young ones, and that is how domestication of animals has happened. That is how we have grown as a society. We have always taken what was extra. It was never about severing the tie of the young one with the mother and taking away all the milk. Unfortunately, that is what has become of this commoditized, industrialized thing. And that is the truth. It does happen in large scale production. Milk composition and character also keeps changing over the lactation cycle. So probably if you buy a packet of milk that arrives at your doorstep and you have, you as a consumer are choosing 2% fat or 4% fat, that milk is standardized. That milk is not what the animal gave you. It has come to a factory, fats have been taken out, few other things have been done to it, it's been pasteurized, it's been turned into a different product, which we know as milk, and that is what we use. So seasons also play a major role in lactation, in the quality of the milk. What we also need to remember that not all milks are the same. Milk does not remain same during the lactation cycle of an animal, and also depending on the breed, the animal, the terroir, how they're raised, where they're grazing, all of these matter and they make a difference. So milk, the most important raw material for making cheese. Now, cheese as a definition is very simple. Cheese is basically an enzymatic process in which we remove the solid from the liquid. And you might ask that paneer is also the same. So we do that same thing with paneer as well. We're removing the solid from the milk. Now, paneer is something called an acid coagulation. What you do is you take the milk to a very high temperature, you add an acid, you curdle the milk, and you separate out the solid from the liquid. It is what we can refer to as the fast technique. Milk is something called, I mean, we're talking a lot about slow food these days. So cheese is essentially something which is a slow food. Milk is alive. You know, milk is something that's vibrant with microbes, with life-giving nutrients. There is sugar, and there are microbes eating it. And when I refer to something as microbes, I'm talking about bacteria, fungi, yeast, and a whole bunch of them, which exist in us, internally, externally, all around us, and they're present in milk as well. These microbes, through a particular period of time, through a duration of time, convert the proteins, sugars, and fats into something that is highly digestible by human beings, and cheese becomes a very different product. Often we refer to as cheesemakers, or people we would refer to something as curds. Now that does not necessarily mean like a tair or a yogurt. It basically means the solid part of cheese. So we'll hold on to this definition of cheese on a very simple level, that cheese is an enzymatic method in which the solids are removed from the liquids. I often say that cheese is an art and science, most probably in equal measures. So it's very important to understand the science. That's how you get your primary product or the mass of cheese. And then it becomes an art, because over a period of time, you as a cheesemaker understand how to take care of it. So there is a very simple term, and we'll come across this later in the presentation as well, affinure. So it's a French term which basically means refining. So as a cheesemaker, you refine your cheese and you make it better over a period of time. There is no part of cheese making where something is done in a rush. Nothing is quick. It takes its own time. And just to give you an idea, I mean, just to throw it out there, today in the world, there are over 7,000 odd documented types or kinds of cheese. All of that would fall into 6 different categories. That's a different thing, but then sorry, I'm hearing a lot of echo for some reason. So, you know, 7,000 odd kinds of cheese out there, but when you look at cheese making, or the process of cheese making that we are also going to see in some time, pretty much everything starts out the same. the basic way of taking out the solid from the liquid remains the same. Doesn't matter what kind of cheese you're making. So what does cheese making involve? What really happens, and what are the different parameters? Time of milking, duration of cheese making, salting, the kind of salt, the country, the region, where the animals are grazing, what are they eating, what is the season, what is the milk type, what is the type of animal, what traditional methods are being used. So when I say traditional methods, still in a number of countries and everything, like wood could be a primary method, material that's used. There is copper that is used, right? So there is clay that is used. All of that and the maturation time makes a difference to the final product. Mr. Gopi said quite a bit about the history. So I'm not going to spend too much time on the history, but just to understand, the cheese is the most ancient way of milk preservation. It was not done by intent, but serendipitously, like he said, it was something that we call spontaneous acidification. So if you forget your milk outside, the milk is going to acidify or curdle, and then there is going to be a separation of solid and liquid. And this was probably observed in a sack or a container made out of animal intestine. Now, interestingly, the animal intestine has got an enzyme called rennet, and that is what our body also uses to break down milk and make it digestible. Unlike what a lot of people, I mean, we do see in modern day today, we do see a lot of cheese that comes out of Europe. And it's a fair assumption that cheese making started in Europe, but that is very far from the truth. Cheese making started probably about 12,000 years back. The first domesticated animal was a sheep, not even a cow. And these started in the areas of what we refer to as the Fertile Crescent, which is Egypt, Israel, Iraq, Iran, Syria, Lebanon, those kind of places. So actually in one place, so one of the most commonly asked questions to me when I started out about 6 years back was, how can you make cheese in Chennai? And honestly, warm weather, microbes thrive in warm weather. So making cheese is not difficult. You can make cheese in any different terrain, anywhere. But the result of the cheese and the kind of cheese that you would make has to be different. So cheese making started probably about 8,000 BC. It came to Europe much later. And in Europe, it became like this thing, a food which was nutrient dense and was being traded and also given to the army. Mass production of cheese started in Switzerland and around the same time in New Jersey as well, which was probably in the 1815 in Switzerland and about 1857 to 1860 in New Jersey. So when we talk about cheese, one of the things to also remember and respect is the provenance of cheese. Today, I mean, I often see that Indians are pretty well traveled, and when they are exposed to a certain kind of cheese in a particular region, and now that there are a fair amount of cheesemakers in the country making cheese, we often ask, oh, but your cheese does not taste like the one I tasted in France. And it's almost impossible because the animal was different, the milking was different. While we do a certain style, it's important to understand that replicating a cheese as it is in another geography, completely removed with a different animal, would produce a new cheese, a completely different cheese. So we are the largest producers of milk. You know, India is the largest producer, but we haven't made any cheese. And why do we not have cheese? Which is not quite accurate, because there is evidence of agro-pastoral settlement in the Indus Valley civilization, where they have been able to ascertain that late in the 3rd millennia, there was cheese that was being made. So probably about 4,500 to 5,000 years back. Also available is documentation on how that became taboo, because making cheese always involved rennet, which was from animal, and that was considered as impure food at some certain point of time as the society started to grow. However, there have been pastoral and nomadic groups who have lived in the fringes. So when I say that Kashmir, in Sikkim, there are these nomadic tribes who still continue to make certain kinds of cheese. So the two that are most common today, and we can also find them in certain markets in urban places, are the Kalari and the Churpi. We as a country are much more familiar and fond of paneer, which is sort of plain testing, very close to milk and all that. But we also need to know that paneer is not an ancient food. Paneer is actually a modern day food, and it started only when the Portuguese came into India in the 16th century and brought with them vinegar. So the vinegar was used to curdle the milk and make chena, as they call it in East India, or now paneer. So paneer is actually something that is much more recent than we would sort of believe or understand. Now, having said that, we still do not make enough cheese. We do make, I mean, of course, you have access to the Amuls and processed cheese, and we will talk about the distinction of each one of them. But we still do not make enough cheese. As the world's largest producer of milk, India has an enormous dairy market, in which cheese plays a very minute role. Approximately 35% of India's total milk production is processed, or rather documented. So we still have a huge amount of milk that we don't know what happens. Where does it go? How is it consumed, used? We have no idea. It's only about 35% that we have some idea about where it goes and how it's used. Numerous value-added products that are made from milk. There is, of course, milk powder, which is one of the earliest packaged milk that we consume. There's butter, ghee, yogurt, processed cheese, ready-to-drink milk products, all of them growing at somewhere between 15 to 25%. And it's a market that's been growing very consistently. If you just look at the world's other big cheese markets like Europe and North America, they're all quite saturated. And that is forcing the suppliers also to look to different places. So more recently, Japan, Russia have become major importers. And also a lot of cheese is pumped into India because our consumption has really gone up. So cheese is one of the fastest growing market among dairy products in India. Traditionally, India has been a paneer consuming market. One of the reasons that's happening is also because of the rising number of food service outlets across the country. And if you follow trends on Instagram and you've seen that, there's been a lot of discussion on why traditional Indian street foods and a lot of other things are being doused with cheese. I mean, we don't need to do that, but cheese becomes this fancy accessory which is being added on everywhere. Consumptions are growing. So what are the opportunities which are there? I mean, we'll talk a little bit about actual roles and market segments, but diversity and abundance of milking animal. So when I say that, India is a place where you find milking donkeys, cow, buffalo, sheep, goat, camel, and there is enough milk. Now, in the current scheme of things in the world market, camel milk has become something of huge importance and demand. There have been many research which says that camel milk has therapeutic properties. And now milk, we need to understand, is highly perishable. Milk does not have shelf life. So milk has to be made stable. And the moment you do that, all the therapeutic properties that we're talking about is almost lost. I mean, the moment you do a UHT on milk to transport it, it's all gone. It's dead. The milk is no longer alive. So how do you store or how do you translate the properties of the milk and give it a longer shelf life? And the only way it can be done is through cheese. What's also happening in the India market now is that imported cheese are losing its importance, right? The luster, whether it's the business B2B or whether it's consumers, there is a driving power to have more local things, and cheese is also a part of that. However, what happens is that the suppliers or the players in the Indian market are so few and such low volumes that demands of B2B for local sourcing are not being met. This is something that the government has also recognized, and there are a lot of promises and talks around a better future in terms of help in setting up companies. The government has also banned a lot of imported cheese that used to come in, which use animal rennet. So that has been banned. So that has given an opportunity for Indian cheese makers to really scale up and make some of those cheeses that are in great demand. I mean, while we're talking about all this, the market or the established market for cheese is not that huge. The process, I'm not even going to get into processed cheese and paneer because that's a huge figure. I'm just trying to, these were analysis that we had done to understand what is the opportunity in artisan cheese or good cheese sort of segment. By 2025, the market is estimated to be somewhere around 6,651 crores, and that is artisan cheese, out of which the the cheese market is about 6,651 crores. This includes processed, industrialized, and imported cheese. Artisan cheese is still a very small part of it because there is an inherent problem to scaling up in artisan business. It can be done, it's just that it requires a much longer runway, which a lot of individual players are not being able to do. To put in that kind of money into the business, to grow, it's been a challenge. But having said that, by 2025, the artisan cheese market out of this total would at least be about 10 to 12%, which is an estimated about 700 crores. So what are the opportunities actually in this market? When I talk about market segments, we need producers that are artisan yet scalable, who would be able to scale their businesses. We need traders. So when there are producers making cheese and they're trying to age the cheese, there is a huge impediment to this whole thing. Your money is sort of stuck. Imagine you're building huge inventory. Even a small scale producer working with 300 to 500 liters of milk, which translate to about 30 to 50 kilos of cheese. And you are making the cheese and storing it for a future. And the minimum time you need to store it for is about 3 months. It can be 6 months, 12 months, 18 months to 2 years. So you are building this huge repository where you're investing money and building it with the stocks for a sale in the future. Now, what has happened in markets like Europe and even in UK and slightly more established markets in the US, there are traders who come and buy the cheese from the producers when they're only a couple of weeks old. And these traders are ones with a supply chain, they have storage. So they make those investments and they are the ones who then take the cheese to specialty retailers or the retail. There is also a huge opportunity for producers for export. Today, the only kind of cheese that is being, India exports a lot of dairy, but most of it is milk powder. There is very little cheese that goes to Russia and other places, but that's because we never really had the expertise or the capacity to build cheese, and that is changing now. What is also important today is milk aggregators with tracking, traceability, who can, like I was saying some time back, only 35% of the milk has actually been accounted for. So there's still a lot of milk which are sort of unreachable and producers cannot find that milk. So if there are aggregators who can build those supply chain and can have tracking and traceability, that's milk that cheesemakers can access. In terms of roles or people, what kind of things they can do, cheesemongers. So cheesemonger is a fancy word, but it's actually an expert that helps consumers decide on cheese. Even now in India, for the sales of cheese actually depends on who is selling the cheese to the consumer, who's talking to them about the consumption pattern, who has that information to give them saying, okay, how much of cheese can I eat? What can I do with this? How can I use the cheese? And we do not have enough people who can talk about this or who have the knowledge about this. to be an educator or a trainer, somebody who knows cheese making, who's an expert at cheese making, then training and creating more of such models. Farmstead cheesemaker. So anybody there's a lot of people that we see who are looking at farm setups. And so farmstead cheese basically means that you have got your own dairy and you're making your own cheese. Retail experience center becomes key because people, if they do not experience and try out cheese, they don't know about it. So there needs to be these places which are like experience centers. And then affineur and grader. So basically when a trader is buying out the cheese, there have to be people who refine and who can grade the cheese. So apart from just being a cheese maker, there are a number of roles and multiple market segments which require people to come in. You know, we are a huge country. Most of the sort of consumption happens in the urban centers, but there are very few producers. I mean, if I give you the number, I think there are only about 25 odd artisan cheese makers at the moment in India. So when I talk about a comparison with on the global scale and where are we, there was this recent survey. I mean, it was 2019, so not really quite recent. In United States, no surprises there, is the largest producer. India is actually 96. Having said that, it's not, you know, we're a very recent cheese making country. We're just sort of getting there, but we have brought home some awards. We have been recognized globally. There are inquiries about export and other things. So there is a Mumbai-based cheese making company called Eleftheria that got a silver last year, and Chennai-based Kesa, which is my brand, we got a bronze. This is actually this is a competition that happens every year. It's called the World Cheese Awards. About 4,300 plus cheeses compete from about 42 odd countries, and the top 200 cheeses get recognized. So, been saying so much about cheese, and we talked the market and other things. Just need to understand, and I'm not going to get into details for a lot of these things because they can just get very technical. What is cheese production? How is cheese made? So there's raw milk. Raw milk comes in, it's pasteurized. Then there is a process called the acidification, ripening, or culturing. So we add some microbes into it, the right kind of microbes, which are going to help in the conversion of the lactose into lactic acid. And then there is so what happens is there is also rennet added to it, and the milk coagulates. So the protein comes together, and we start to see that the milk is becoming a solid. Stirring and cooking is when the solids are then cut, slowly moved around and stirred so that the curds become a little firmer, and then the water is expelled from that. There are different cheese molds. You put the cheese, and then they're ready for aging or ripening or maturation of the cheese. A lot of cheese making is actually human. So until and unless we're talking about processed cheese or large scale cheese, it's a skill of the cheese maker. Whether it's a small batch, I mean, we consider 100 liters a small batch, or whether it's a 3,000 liter batch of cheese, it's a skill of cheese maker. It's their knowledge, it's their thing, which eventually turns it into a great product. So cheese making, even at the scale of 3,000 liters of milk in a single batch, is artisan, and even 100 liters is artisan. You know, one of the things which we most often hear about cheese is high fat. I don't eat cheese because it's not good for me. And you are right, but you are right when it's referring to processed cheese. And I'm going to define the different kinds of cheese quickly, but also to understand that cheese is one of those extremely protein heavy and dense food, which will provide you your per every meal protein requirement. So if you're somebody who's a vegetarian, eating 50 grams of cheese in a particular meal will really help you. Cheese is, of course, it's got fats, it's got protein, has a number of vitamins, fat soluble and water soluble. So A, D, B12, B2. It's much more dense in calcium than actually milk. To get your calcium, imagine that amount of milk that you will have to drink. So while milk has a lot of carbohydrate, which is almost 40% because of the sugars, cheese has 1 or 0 or sort of trace carbohydrates, because that sugar is actually the food of the microbes. Salt is an important part in making cheese, or usually as cheesemakers, we use only 2% salt. So in a fresh cheese might taste lightly salted. As the cheese matures, because the water is evaporating, the salt becomes a little stronger. So as a consumer, what is cheese and what kind of cheese should you be picking up? Artisan, natural, farmstead, these are words that are common, but also being used as gimmick words. So when you look at the list of ingredients, your ingredient list would be milk, culture, rennet, salt. That's about it. There doesn't have to be any other ingredient in it, because it's made from whole milk and it's protein rich. There might be spices or things that are added to it for flavors, but you should not find additives, emulsifiers, binders, fungicide. So industrialized cheese are a different product. These are made in very large quantities. So it's 80% milk solid, 20% additive. And when I say additives, is an emulsifier, starch-based binders, fungicides. When we talk about processed cheese, that formula is reversed. It's 80% additive to 20% milk solid. So that is where that fat comes, right? That is where it's a lot of added fat. Today, especially, we keep hearing a lot about vegan cheese, that dairy is bad, vegan cheese is the way to go. Now, what is vegan cheese? Vegan cheese is something that's made with nuts. It's made with nut milk, which are extremely heavy on fat. Plus, nuts are not meant to be shelf stable. If you leave a walnut for too long, it gets rancid. So they can spoil and degenerate very quickly. So there are a lot of additives that are added to these so-called cheese alternatives. Just a little bit about me and Kaiser and what we have been doing. So I started my cheese making journey about 6 years back. This is going to be my 7th year. Anuradha and I co-founded this. So Anuradha has a background in social enterprise. She's a social worker. She was working on a project where she was working with girls who are differently able. And I had this idea of doing something in food. And we came together, we started Kaiser. As we were growing into the first year, this was like 2017, we realized that there's very little that we know. So while Anu became the operation person, I was the one who was into product, and I developed a very keen interest about it. And I realized that cheese making is something that has existed from centuries. So it was important to understand how cheese was made rather than trying to reinvent the wheel and create something. So my exploration has been to go to different places, understand cheese making, come back and try to recreate that over here. But also as we grew, we realized a lot of things about milk. We were like, regular people, regular consumers who got our milk bottle delivered every day. But cheese making sort of helped us discover milk in a completely different way. And that is when we also realized that the kind of milk that we want to work with is non-commercial. It's not really commercial dairy, which is acquired through not very ethical means. It was important to us. So we started working with smaller dairy farmers or aggregators, where it was indigenous cows, native breeds, good farm practices, natural herding, and we would source whatever they called was extra. There was the young ones always stayed on the farm. They were not separated. Around 2021, when we started our next phase of growth, we said, hey, you know what? Instead of just scaling up in Chennai, making cheese in one place, where's the fun in that? I mean, we need variety. We need to look at different things. Why not work with communities that already have a lot of milk? And we engage with them. We set up a cheese making there, we train them on cheese making, and then we create this marketplace. So that is what we have been doing. We have been working with communities in different places, especially in Rajasthan and Gujarat. We make camel milk cheese, goat, sheep, cow, and buffalo are obviously the bulk. And we have a pan-India distribution. We work with some really large people, but also for me personally, the thing has been to shape this industry, bring in more people. So I train, I help set up cheese making units, and yeah, that's something we have been doing. I am happy to sort of take questions, because I think if we talk, we might just have a more meaningful discussion, and there's a lot I've just been saying.
Thank you. Thank you, Namrata. We'll keep the floor open for questioning now.
You're most welcome.
Yeah. Participants, you may please unmute and ask your questions, please.
Madam, actually, I just wanted to know what is the difference between a normal cheese and a cheddar cheese. Is that cheese, I mean, what people talk about mixing animal fat?
No, so cheddar is a kind of cheese that comes from UK, the Somerset region of UK, where a lot of cheddar is produced. Now, animal fat can be mixed into anything. So when you're making a processed cheese and you're making bulk, like a lot of industrial cheese and processed cheese, there are animal fat that's being used or mixed into them. Cheddar has got nothing to do with that. Again, like I said sometime back, it depends on what cheddar you're buying. Where are you buying it from? Look at the packet, see what are the ingredients. If it's something which says 80% added fat, emulsifiers, stabilizers, and all that, that's probably what you want to buy.
Hello.
Yes.
Madam, what is the difference between cheese analog and cheese block, madam?
Cheese block and cheese analog.
Yes, yes.
Okay, so a block of cheese very simply can just be a block of cheese. A cheese made in a block, right? But analog is processed cheese. It's basically 20% milk solid, 80% added fats, preservatives, additives, and all of that. So that is thing which is not real cheese is referred to as analog.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
No problem.
Is cheese making process can be adopted in a village atmosphere, or it require a big infrastructure or conditions?
It can be done anywhere. And in fact, the place where I'm doing in Gujarat and Rajasthan are extremely interior places. So it can be done in a farm atmosphere. It can be done. It's just that there are some specialized things that you need to make a good cheese. You need to understand that because it's milk, there is always a very high risk of contamination. So your place, you need a clean room. So when I say clean room, it has to be sterilized, not using chemicals or everything, but just salt, vinegar, hot water. All of these can be used. You need clean places. We usually work with stainless steel because that's easy to sort of sanitize and everything. And you need an aging atmosphere. So that is one that can get tricky and can be more expensive. So to set up a cold room kind of thing, you might need about 5-7 lakhs. Then there has to be electricity and other things. But if you're not doing that and you're making small batch production, those bottle chillers, which we see Coke, Pepsi, and all of those things, they can be also used for storing cheese. So it can be made in any place. Of course, like I said, electricity and a few other things would be needed, but you can make it in remote rural places as well.
Okay, and the aging process, what is the conditions, or it is a refrigeration?
Not really. So cheese maturing conditions are from 14 degrees to 18 degrees. Cheese needs a little bit of warmth. It does not need to be in very cold. So cheese becomes very cold. Also, cheese is a lot, fridge becomes very cold. Also, fridge is a lot of condensation. Cheese to age properly needs slightly higher temperature, like I said. Also, it needs about 85% humidity.
Okay. And the difference between really the cheese and paneer, can you just give us in a layman language?
Sure. So paneer is an acid coagulated milk product. So in paneer, what you do is you heat the milk to a very high temperature and you add an acid. It could be vinegar, it could be lemon, it could be thyme, whatever. And you have separated the solid from liquid. Now, once you separate that, it just becomes a mass which has got its protein, fat, and carbohydrate intact. Nothing is going to happen to the lactose. It's going to remain like this. And that is where most of the problem arises, because as human beings, as we grow up, we lose our ability to digest lactose. And that's when we develop intolerance and problems. In cheese, what is happening is cheese, the solid is removed from the liquid by an enzymatic process. In that process, you have never taken the milk to extremely high temperature. So the microbes are alive and the microbes are kind of pre-digesting the proteins, fats, and carbs for you. So cheese becomes very easy to digest. Paneer, people will struggle to digest. It's a much more heavy food for you.
Thanks a lot. Thanks a lot. Many more success to you.
Thank
Madam?
you so much.
Madam, I have some more
Yes.
question. If I taste paneer, it tastes like a milk solids, madam. If
Yes.
I taste cheese, it's like a so taste, madam. How is it?
Yeah, because that's exactly what I said. You know, the lactose in the milk
Oh, okay.
is intact in paneer. So paneer is sweet.
Okay.
The lactose in cheese has been converted to lactic acid. So
Okay,
cheese is sour.
Okay. Thank you.
No.
Namrata, do you work with cooperatives or any rural finance kind of entity?
Yes, so I have worked with Samonati and set up something in Maduranthaka, and also Sahajivan, which is a large trust. And Sahajivan does a lot of grassroots work with pastoral community. So, pastoral communities have had their milking animals for the longest time. They don't really have a market to sell the milk. So a lot of milk is actually wasted or mixed into different cooperative milk, like as sheep, goat, and all is sold off as cow's milk by mixing. So for them, they had a huge problem that how do they get value? And often they don't get fair price for that. So that's how I started working with Sahajivan and do the work in Rajasthan and Gujarat.
Right. Thanks.
Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, Pratap, go on.
Good morning, ma'am. It was a nice presentation.
Thank you so much.
I learned about cheese because in India we know only like 3-4 type of cheeses like Parmesan, cheddar, or blue cheese.
Yeah.
So my question is like, how do we incorporate those variety of cheeses in in Indian cuisine, or how do we consume it? Because with paneer we make all paneer kofta, this, that, and all that.
Yeah.
But how do we use the rest of the cheeses in Indian cuisine, and how do we consume it?
So cheese consumption pattern becomes a hugely tricky subject in India because we want to cook with it. We want to make it like you use it as a sauce, you use it in sandwiches and pastas or whatever, and you cook it. Now, while there's nothing wrong with that, what happens in the process is cheese is alive. It's got probiotic qualities, right? So the moment you cook with it, those qualities are gone, and it is just your fats and proteins that are left behind. So cheese can be used. So for example, you can put anything that, let's say you have dosa. It can be grated on top of a dosa, right? I have done my own things of adding it into paniyaram or things like that. But the best way to consume cheese is have a little slice of cheese, have it with a fruit or a cracker or a biscuit or whatever, and just that can be your snack. So for example, we a lot of us have this practice of having some almonds in the morning. Yeah. So you would put that in thing and that would be one snack. Or probably at tea time, you're eating some biscuits. Instead of that, you can have a piece of cheese. And cheese actually pairs really well. It's not only cheese and wine. Cheese and coffee, cheese and tea. Cheese is very nice with a lot of other things. So think of cheese as a snack and start getting to this thing where you just have a piece of cheese on its own and a 50-gram piece.
All right, thank you. The one more question is, there is this cheese called Brendan cheese in Kolkata.
Bandel.
Yes, Brandel.
Yeah.
So, that is somewhat similar to paneer, but it has a very distinct, flavor and texture.
Yes. So it's not exactly cheese by the definition. Basically, it's what they call chena, right? In Bengal and all so I'm from Odisha. So from that, the paneer that you make, before it's pressed and becomes paneer, it's crumbly. That's called chena. So what they do big balls of that. They rub it with a lot of salt and then they smoke it so that it becomes hard over a period of time and then it's stored. So if you see any of these ancient techniques and everything, food was only available for a certain amount of time. Life was very different back then. So a lot of things was about food preservation. Yeah. So that's why we do make pickles and that. So bandel was also made like that. Bandel is actually chena, which is then preserved for years because it's really high on salt and then it's dried out by smoking.
All right.
Kavita, you may please unmute and ask your question, Kavita.
I think I see Kavita's question here. What is the minimum quantity one can start making artisan cheese? Kavita, so in my experience, the minimum quantity which gives you good result is 5 liters. So 5 liters basically translates to 500 grams of cheese. If you do anything less than that, then your results are not good. So if you want to run some experiments at home and want to make cheese, a 5-liter batch of raw milk is good.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I also see a question from Rubesh asking, can I know if there are any opportunities available in Kirka cheese? Well, I mean, probably just send me a mail, let me know what you're looking for. If you're trying to be an entrepreneur, maybe you want to start something of your own. If it's supporting you in the knowledge transfer or something, that's definitely something we can discuss.
Can we get your contact details or communication details?
Sure. I will leave that on the chat.
Yes, madam. I have got 2 questions, madam.
Yes, please.
One is as you said that cheese is much preferred over paneer for vegetarians because it is it is having all the nutrients, right? The right nutrients.
Yeah, so also it's highly digestible. So imagine cheese is a food that is, so you know what happens, Sanjay, when we eat protein, right? Our body works on it to break the protein down to amino acids, the fats into fatty acids, so they can be absorbed by the bloodstream, and that's how but in cheese, the proteins have already been digested by the microbes into amino acids. So in slightly technical terms, it's called the nutrients are bioavailable for you. So basically your body finds it a lot more easier to absorb things from from cheese rather than from paneer, which has a much longer digestion time.
Okay. So people are they intolerant to this? I mean, to cheese I'm talking. Can people like other milk intolerance?
So milk intolerance is mostly to do with lactose intolerance.
But for cheese, there is no intolerance.
No. So lactose intolerance is normal because we as adults, beyond 10 years of age, we lose our ability to actually digest lactose, right? But because we keep drinking milk until much later, we develop a sort of tolerance. But for some people, it does not come. And the major problem there is just the lactose. But in cheese, what happens is, so if you, let's say if you eat cream cheese, which is only 2 days old, cream cheese will still have lactose and you will react to it. But if you eat a cheddar which has been aged for 6 months, you will not have any problem because there is no lactose left.
Okay. So basically for vegetarians, the artisan cheese is better than the industrial one, obviously.
Oh, absolutely. Industrial, I mean, it's like real food and fake food.
Real food and food. So what is the shelf life of artisan cheese, which vegetarians can keep in their homes? Like for how many, what is the shelf life?
Without any preservatives, without any additives and all of that, fresh cheese can last you anywhere from 10 days to 30 days. It's best consumed within that time because it's fermenting. It's constantly fermenting. You need, like I have been saying again and again, cheese is alive. So you will see little microbes and this thing. We as consumers don't like to see that. So we throw it out, right?
Okay.
But anything that has moisture, anything that has life will attract fungus. And it's perfectly fine. But when we talk about matured cheeses, cheeses that have been matured over a period of time, they have very little moisture. So their shelf life is like 6 months to a year.
Okay. So we need not keep in the fridge.
In the fridge.
In the
It
fridge.
needs to be refrigerated. Yes.
Okay. Okay. It needs to be refrigerated.
Yeah. Because I'm talking about Chennai. It's so hot now that the cheese will become like a gloopy mess if I just leave it, right? Because there's nothing, no binder, nothing. The fats, it will just start to melt away.
Yeah,
So
and the artisan cheese, does it have a certification like this is artisan? I mean, what is the? I mean, how to know that this is not from industry?
Artisan from the label. You need to look at the label of your product and see what your ingredients are. There is no certification available, so it's not like a handicraft industry, right? So artisan is also a very. I often like to use the word natural more than the word artisanal, but artisanal is what people normally understand. Artisanal is a very loosely defined word, made with hand, right? So something that is handmade, handcrafted is called artisanal, and we apply that across different industries. But natural cheese, industrialized cheese, and processed cheese.
Okay. So one is it is good for B12. It's rich in B12, so it's good for vegetarians.
Oh, absolutely it is.
Because vegetarians get affected by B12, the lack of B12. Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Protein. Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Subramanian, you may please unmute and ask your question, Subramanian. Okay, what, Mrs.
Yes,
hello.
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt. This is Mrs. Subramanian. I just wanted to know where can I buy the very small quantity of rennet, the enzyme, to make cheese at home?
On my website, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Because rennet is only available in some commercial and large quantities. You need very rennet. So, for example, if you're using 5-liter milk to make cheese at home, you need like half a gram of rennet, right?
Okay.
But the minimum quantity of rennet that you can buy from a supplier is about 2 kilos. So it's a very, very huge quantity. So what we do is on our website, I have something called a cheese making kit, which comes with a recipe and certain guidelines. So you can just buy it on our website. I'll leave those on the chat for you to see. And yeah, so you can buy small. The ones on Amazon are not reliable because they're often past their expiry date. So you don't get them.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Kavita, the regulating body is, of course, FSI. Even FSI today does not fully understand what is artisan cheese because very few people have made it or don't, so it's not defined. So a bunch of us are trying to define the guidelines for artisan cheese in India.
Otherwise, for artisan cheese, how many companies are there in India? Indian companies making artisan cheese.
Probably about 20, 25.
Okay. Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
I have another question.
Yes, please.
You're an artisanal cheese, and there are big companies like Amul, Britannia, they too come to
Yeah.
market with different kind of cheeses. So how
Yeah.
do you compete with them, or how do you price your product? How do you
Uh,
see a
we,
growth
we
of artisanal against those big giants?
We don't, because that is a very different market segment. So Amul cheese, let's say their per kilo price would be like a 500 rupees. Yeah.
Okay.
The base of cheese that we make, artisan cheese makers, and our pricing is between 1,800 a kilo going all the way up to 5,000 rupees a kilo. So we are in a very different segment. And because the price of good milk is so high, plus most of the artisan cheese makers operate in urban spaces where again we have got our own, pricing becomes really high. So we are a very premium segment, and the more number of players come in and the more access we have to good quality of milk without paying crazy amounts of like 90 rupees, 100 rupees a liter. I mean, I'll give you an example. When I was in Chennai and I was trying to make goat milk cheese, which has a really high demand, the really good milk that I could procure was from Hassan. It used to get milked in the evening, sent to me in a cold box and everything, and I would get it in the morning and make the cheese, which is not ideal, by the way. My cost for getting a liter of milk was about 450 rupees a liter, which was crazy. And I used to sell the cheese for 5,000 rupees a kilo. But now I make cheese in Gujarat, where there is an abundance of really good quality goat milk. The cooperatives would buy the milk at, say, 30 rupees a liter, which is again to mix the milk and everything. But we do a fair price, and we work with 60 different families where we pay them 55 rupees per liter because the expectation is only 30.
Right.
So we need to find such pockets, because those exist in India. And that's the only way I was able to now re-offer my goat cheese as less than half the cost.
Okay.
So yeah, so to answer your question, we do not see processed cheese as competition. That is not what we should be doing. I mean, well, some of us do, but that is not what we should be. This is a completely different product segment, and it's a new segment that is still evolving. So there is a lot of, it's a very involved selling. You need to talk to your customers. You need to be able to tell them what is the difference. And I have seen over the years, people who would buy a single product from us saying, it's like how people adapted organic eating, right? You want to buy the right kind of vegetables and you buy one. And then the family and the kids, and they know that this is something better. So they have stopped buying something which is processed and buy this. So that shift is gradually going to happen, but we do not compare our products with the processed cheese at all.
All right. Thank you.
No problem. Kavita, how to identify buyers? It depends on where you are, what is your social circle, who are the people around you. I have seen in my experience, I've trained about 12 different people to become professional cheesemakers. And I always tell them that your inner circle is like the first round. So if you have kids going to school, the school moms, if you're staying in an apartment complex, your people over there in the community, they become your first buyers. It's a very involved selling. You need to be able to talk about your product. So that's how you start. And then it's word of mouth.
Ma'am, this is Rubesh.
Mm-hmm.
My doubt is, goat milk is better, or a cow or a cow's milk is better?
So when you say better, in what sense?
Like
Are you
in
talking about
making of
nutrition?
cheese.
No, are you talking? Okay. So see, goat milk is the clear favorite if we talk about, say, market like France. Right? Goat milk is very different. The goat milk cheese has got a completely different flavor profile to itself. Now in India, while people are curious and there's a certain amount of people who really like the cheese, not everyone can take the strength of goat milk cheese. It's a very different product altogether. Nutrition wise, it's a lot more lighter. Cow milk is heavier than goat milk. Buffalo milk is much more heavier than cow milk. Sheep milk is even heavier than. So all these milks are slightly different in the composition. Yeah. So nutrient wise, I think, and flavor wise and everything, I personally like goat milk a lot. It's very vibrant. Cow milk is a little bit plain compared to the goat, as in the cheeses. But still, the bulk of cheese that we all sell and people buy is cow milk cheese. Goat milk is only a very small percentage.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you. Ma'am, in terms of cost wise, which will be the best one, ma'am, or a good one comparatively?
Goat milk is a premium. Goat milk cheese is a premium product. Cow milk, because it's much more abundantly available, you can, it's easily accessible. You can easily sell. Goat milk, you need specialized selling as well.
Okay, ma'am.
I think, madam, for marketing, in India, we should use the term cheese is better pitched against, because everybody compares that with paneer. So the difference should be highlighted and say, and especially pitched for B12 for vegetarians, as well as the concentrated amounts of the nutrients which it has.
No, I agree.
And it is not lactose intolerant. I mean, these things should be highlighted actually in the marketing.
Yeah.
So then people will know it. And especially for vegetarians, I mean, that way.
True.
Because we have got a good 30% of 35% vegetarian population in India. So this may become very popular because of B12 factor.
Yeah.
Unlike paneer.
True. Thank you, Kavita.
Ma'am, how do you promote your products if you're not going to be, do you have any specialized stores or it is completely online? Or you take part in pop-up markets?
Yes, so it's a mix of everything that you said. So the first 2 years of me starting this company, Anu and I did a pop-up, almost one pop-up every day of the week. We were out there, we would have people sample our product, take orders, and then deliver. By the third, fourth year, I think also COVID happened, in between. And I had realized that we're not really a retail product. If I send my product into mass retail, it's not easy for us to survive because of the scale. Also, retailers are not really small business friendly. They talk about volumes, there is return and replacement, handling is not proper. So it was not something that we wanted to do. We wanted to be very closely connected with the customers. So individually, I do a huge amount of events, just that events have become more specialized. I do a number of pairing sessions, the different ways in which you can eat cheese. So whether it's workshops of putting together different meals, integrating cheese as the main protein, or it could be wine and cheese and chocolate pairing. Any forum where I can actually talk about cheese and get people to experience that is what I do. Across the country, we have 30 odd partners, and these are not traditional retailers, but these are people who deal with artisan or gourmet food, and we sell with them. So we have an understanding of no return and no replacement, because they also sort of respect artisan, small batch products and the challenges that come with it. And that's how Chennai is the only place, because it's home ground, that you will find us in Terra and Pumpkin Tails. Otherwise, we do not retail.
Fine, ma'am. And do you use anything like, people use the word organic very much. So
no, we do not use the word organic. We do not use I use the word natural. So need to understand. So when I started out, we were looking, we said, okay, what's a good thing? Okay, we should find organic milk. So we found organic milk. And after making cheese with it, I realized that the cheese was terrible. It was like plasticky and white. Now, cow milk is a beautiful quality. I mean, just for something for you to know, that when it's good quality cow milk, you see a little yellowish in the milk. And that reason for that is not fat. Cows have a particular issue that they cannot digest beta carotene available in grass. So what they do is that the milk then has a beta carotene is orange in color. So it sort of just has a little coating of that yellowish thing. Now, the cheese that we're making with organic milk was just turning out to be white. And we found out that it's because the cows were being fed organic corn. Now, corn is not good for cows, but it was certified organic corn that was being fed to the cows, and they were eating that. And hence, the end product was not nice. So we realized that we're not going after the word organic. It then again just becomes like a gimmicky thing, but we find good quality milk. So we have a lot of different criterias, a whole bunch of things that we go through with our partners from where we source the milk. And we use the word natural. So these are all naturally raised, free grazing, or animals which have a fair amount of grazing.
Right.
Thank you. Okay. Shantakumar's question, as there are health benefits of cheese in diet and risks of overeating, how much of daily cheese is just right? Individually, if you're not eating any other protein heavy thing, like say, for example, meat, in a day, you can consume 150 grams of cheese, and each portion is 50 grams. So the reason we also pack our cheese in 150 gram is it's 3 portions, and you can just have 50 grams in a meal, not more than 50 grams in a meal. Of course, there are events in which there's a lot of cheese served, but I have usually seen that people do not go beyond. Cheese is also something that takes over your palate after some time. It makes you feel heavy. So you can't really go on eating like 200 grams of cheese. That's very unlikely. People stop at that 80 to 100 gram mark is where people cut off.
Ma'am, this is Rubesh, another one
Yes.
doubt.
Sure.
Ma'am, like, what if we like freeze the milk like to a solid form, from liquid to solid form in suppose about -5 degrees or something like that, and after or 1 or 2 days we use, will there be the same potential or same efficiency will be there on the cheese?
It's very interesting, Rubesh. I have not. So, but next week I'm doing an experiment where somebody is freeze drying the milk at source, goat milk, and turning that into powder and sending it to me to see how the cheese. So I suspect the what we call the natural flora, or the microbial thing which is available in the milk, which translates into the cheese and gives cheese particular flavor profile, that may not be there, but I really don't know. Also, the microbes are funny. There are microbes which love below 30 degrees. There are ones that are, so we call them the aromatic. Most of the flavors in the cheese comes from those microbes. So I don't know how it's going to work because I have not worked, but I know that across the world, there is a practice of using milk powder to make cheese. That also happens. My thing, from what I understand, is that cheese will not be as flavorsome.
Like just for telling that if we are suppose freezing the milk, it may be useful or useful for us to transport the milk.
So you're talking about frozen milk? No, sorry. Yeah. Frozen milk has a big problem, Rubesh. So what happens is the moment you thaw the milk, bring it down to room temperature, you warm the milk, the fat separates. All the fat goes out. So, the fat will just come to the top. So milk is very loose. The solids in the milk are actually very loose structures. So they're not bound with each other, right? So we use rennet as a binding agent. Rennet is something that the process is called coagulation. It brings together the proteins, it traps the fat, it creates an. But the moment you freeze the milk and you thaw the milk, all the fat comes to the top. So your cheese that you would get would be a very dry cheese.
Okay.
It's not,
Okay.
freezing milk is a complete no-no for, if you dry the milk into a powder and then you reconstitute it, I think that would be a different thing.
Okay. Okay. Ma'am.
Question by Kavita. Namrata, this is a question by, from Kavita.
Sure.
What would be the learning period of proper cheese making, where one proper training?
So Kavita, I'll tell you about what has been my experience. I work with individuals to help them set up their cheese making career. So for me, it's 6 months. I work with a person for 6 months where they sort of start working, practice on the cheese, perfect the cheese. All that I can possibly give to that person happens over that 6 months, and then they take off from there, right? But learning is, of course, a constant. So I have a network of students, we meet, we talk and everything. But in 6 months' time, you can be a cheesemaker who can start making your own cheese. That much I can tell you.
Thank you, Namrata. The session is really wonderful.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
Venugopalan, you want to ask a question?
Yeah, hi.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I was basically, I mean, I think the entrepreneurship is what I was trying to look at, and probably she has answered as to, I mean, how new entrepreneurs can probably get into this segment. So let me, I mean, have my thoughts on it and how we can promote entrepreneurs to get into the field with the advice and help of Madam. Yeah, sure, dear. Thank you.
Yeah, she has shared her contact details in the chat box.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
Done. I can take it. Sure, sir. Thank you then. That's good.
Vichu, Vishwanath. Vichu, any question from your side? Probably now we can ask Ms. Revati Kumaravel to speak a few words. The mother-in-law joined.
Oh my God. I had no idea.
I'm happy to
Yes,
be here.
yes.
She is my daughter-in-law.
Sorry.
What are you doing here?
I'm very proud to hear about her talk. Very proud to hear about all this.
Thank you, Amma. That's so sweet.
I'm very proud to be here. I got the link through my brother-in-law, so I'm attending this session. Thank you.
Anyone else has a question? You may please unmute and ask. NSM, sir.
Yeah, I'm good at eating cheese, not asking questions. Anyhow, just one sort of little crazy. What prompted you to get into this cheese business?
It kind of started because of Anuradha, my business partner, because I have always been this friend who people consult about food. Food has been an area of interest, so whether it's like I'm traveling, where can I eat, how can I cook with something. So when Anu was starting, I mean, she wanted to help. She was working with a bunch of girls who are differently able, and she wanted to start a baking unit. And when she spoke to me, I said, no, let's not do baking. Let's start cheese making. And I had just gone for a farm stay and been exposed to cheese making for the first time. And I really thought, I mean, we did not have any artisan brands in Chennai. It's very difficult. I mean, and I'm talking about late 2016. You could not buy a good fresh mozzarella or a feta or something that you needed. And that's how we started. Unlike all my, consulting with people where I would say, have a business plan and do this and do that. I didn't do any of that. Just jumped into it, and it's been just growing from strength to strength.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vishwanath.
Hi, this is Lakshmi again. I just wanted to ask you, how complicated is it to make blue cheese?
It's not complicated. It's honestly as difficult as any other, like a cheddar or whatever. It's a mature aged cheese. Just that it's got multiple layers. Blue is a specific kind of fungus, and you want to create an atmosphere within that cheese for the blue to grow. So you need to understand, and that's true for Lakshmi, that's true for any cheese that you make. Every cheese has got a different requirement depending where they're from. The best cheddars are made in the caves in Somerset, and they have an atmosphere which is musty, and they get something called cheese mites too. Now, when we talk about blue, there are some classic blues from across the world, right? So, for example, if you're trying to make a Roquefort, which is from France, the first thing is the milk. So Roqueforts are always made with sheep milk. So it's like a guide template. You break down what you're looking for in recreating a cheese, and then you make it. So yeah.
Is the process longer compared to the other cheeses?
Not really. Blues are usually ready within 3 months. But if you talk about the Parmesan, which is such a popular cheese, a Parmesan takes 3 years to be ready. The real Parmesan. There are a lot of fake Parmesans, but a real Parmigiano is ready only in like 3 years. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, Vishnu, please go on.
Hi. My question is, suppose we create a kind of cooperative to make this cheese. What kind of quantity will you be able to market if we set up a rural cooperative?
So, okay, I mean, just to give you an idea, when we started out in 2016, 2017, we were selling about 10 kilos, 15 kilos a month, which then went up to a few hundred kilos. And right now we sell over 2,000 kilos a month. Right? Okay. So we have always grown in a way where we have, so when I say 2,000 kilos, I would probably make only about 1,200 odd in Chennai, and the others I get from specialized places like the Gujarat and Rajasthan that I've helped. So they are also growing and we're also growing. So it's something we can discuss because this market itself has a huge demand that we're not able to cater to at the moment. But when you say rural cooperative structure, there's also a significant investment in terms of putting up an aging atmosphere for that, which has been a huge deterrent in most cases.
See, because we are having manufacturing facility about 50 kilometers from Chennai, not 50, 75 kilometers. So we find a lot of women, they are, I mean, other than agriculture, if cheese making can augment their income.
Yeah.
So if you can, I mean, you will be the link to market. They will only be the manufacturers. So that is what we are.
So cheese making can definitely, because it's a huge incentive for dairy farmers to get better value. The milk will never give them that value. But having said that, the cheese will only get the value 3 to 4 months after the cheese has been made. So there is a time where they have to receive the money for the milk and then profit. So most of the model in which we work is there is an upfront cost that the suppliers in Gujarat have said 60 families. So they get fair price for the milk, and then when the company brings in the profit, they get a share of that. But that's like it. So somebody in the interim has to be investing in creating this inventory and the place. So
if you can give me a ballpark idea of
sure
per kilogram of, I mean, what will be the kind of 4 months, what kind of per kilo, what is the lock-in
Yeah.
amount?
Yeah, the lock-in and the sort of I'll definitely do that. If you can just have my number, if you can just WhatsApp,
I'll do that.
I'll do that. Yeah.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just Gopi sir, one last question.
Yeah, please.
Yes.
Yeah. You mentioned, madam, the France thing. Then I was just in France, for each day they have a different type of cheese, like in the sense that they have more than 365 varieties of cheese, some 400. So these cheeses are inherently different just by processing only, or something else which makes them different?
Just by processing, and not all cheese are made everywhere. So it's not a day of the year, but it's different regions. Each region makes a different kind of cheese. There are many, like a particular village only makes that particular kind of. So there would be 10 producers from a village which make a camembert. Normandy region, there would be 25 producers who are only making brie, right? So that's how it works. It's not in those countries. In fact, I was in Italy and in France and looking at their practices day in and day out. So when there is milk in the morning and there's milk in the evening. A cheesemaker would just be making that one style of cheese, and they have made it for 3 generations, sometimes 5, 6 generations, and they just specialize in one thing. It's just that as a country, they make different, like so many varieties. In Italy, for example, some protected designation of origin, there is a protected designation of origin for 200 plus kinds of cheeses.
Okay. So basically the process means the microbes are also different.
Not really.
Okay.
When I say the process is different, the starting process is same for everybody, right? It's how long it's matured, what kind of conditions they're matured in, what season they are made, what kind of milk it is, all of that. At what stage is the salting done? What is there is a science bit to it, which is the acidity, which is the heat and all of that. And then there is an art to it of how they actually mature it.
Okay, madam. Thank you very much, madam. Thank you for an excellent presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Gopi sir.
Thanks, Sanjay. Welcome, Sanjay. Anyone else has a question? Namrata, I think we are done. So thank you. Thank you very much for taking your time out on a Sunday morning to be with us.
You're most welcome. This is very engaging. Thanks, everybody.